What's up, guys? Let's go over Season 4's best aspects and tempering things to go ahead and look out for all builds. Now, keep in mind, I'm just going to show off one build here, and I'll go ahead and explain kind of some of the things that will overlap for all of the classes, so it doesn't really matter what you're playing. This is kind of what you're looking for 99% of players. And I say 99% because if you are doing some sort of channeled build, or let's say Thorns, that could actually be a little bit different, but for the most part, this is pretty much what most people will be looking for. So, starting right off, in terms of one of the defensive aspects that a lot of people will be using is going to be Juggernauts. This is super strong in Season 4 because you literally just need this one aspect and your armor is completely done. This was mentioned in one of the campfire chats they did just a few days ago, where they mentioned that specifically getting 9,230 armor is all you need, and it's going to have a cap of 85%. At that point, you do not need to exceed that like you would normally do when we had the PTR. You needed to go up way higher, but all you need to do is reach that number and you will be good to go. It's actually quite easy to hit. In fact, if you are playing, let's say, the Barbarian, you'll be able to actually get armor pretty easy, as it is a source of stat when you just start getting strength. If you get a greater affix and you start tempering on it, you can actually make it quite great to the point where you may not even need the Juggernauts aspect. There is another build with the Frosty Stride Sorceress where you would not want Juggernauts, so keep that in mind. That's kind of niche, but for the most part, you definitely want to consider running Juggernauts, but there are some exceptions, and that would be either if you're Barbarian or if you're running the Frosty Strides build, then you can't really run it, or you wouldn't need to. But you could look out for plus 2 armor rolls. That is actually really good in the next upcoming season, but for the most part, for 99% of the player base, run Juggernauts is going to solve all your armor problems. And what you're really looking for in the helmet category is specifically getting cooldown reduction, maximum life, and mana per second. It could also be fury per second, it could be essence per second, doesn't matter. Same thing does apply. Now, as far as the other defensive stat, maximum life is objectively one of the better stats to go ahead and go for, but if you do need some sort of niche thing for your build, like ranks of something, then you can go for it there as well. But then also getting your resistances. If you are playing the Sorceress or the Necromancer, since you will be scaling intelligence, you may not need to go ahead and get resistances on every single piece of gear, but for the other classes, getting resistances here and there, whether you temper it or it's on one of the gear stats, that's totally fine too. But cooldown reduction for majority of builds will be very important, and that will be in the helmet. Keep in mind, the brand new stat is 75% in terms of cooldown reduction for its max value. Anything after that is not going to be worth investing points into. But that's it for the helmet. Next up, moving on to the chest piece over here, you still can prioritize getting your main stat, your maximum life, and you can also get the mana per second. So main stat meaning dexterity if you're playing rogue, strength if you're playing barbarian, but getting maximum life and getting the mana or resource per second is really good. The only exception where you wouldn't want to get some sort of resource per second is if you're playing a generator build. That'd be the Bash Barbarian, Arclash Sorceress, but for the most part, you do want to get some sort of resource per second, as it's kind of tied to, well, your character's damage, so to speak. Now, this is where it gets a little bit fuzzy in terms of what you want to go for, depending on the class that you're playing. So with the brand new season, most people will be probably playing the Frozen Orb Sorceress, or let's say the Dust Devil Barbarian, which you can also apply Bleed with. So, depending on the class you're playing, it could be some sort of condition. This one, when you're using a conjuration skills, you get some sort of damage reduction. You can run the aspect where if you use a basic attack, like if you're playing a combo point rogue build, maybe Twisting Blades or Rapid Fire, you get some sort of amount of damage reduction if you use a basic skill. There's a lot of different ones. Depending on the class that you are playing, you do definitely want some extra sources of damage reduction. And the reason why you'd want it is because, well, damage reduction doesn't necessarily roll like it normally would on a lot of the other pieces of gear that you would have in Season 3 and previous. Now, getting that damage reduction is going to be a lot harder, so getting that damage reduction in multiple different areas could be very good, or you could look at on the Paragon board. You don't really want too much offensive stats in the defensive department, like in the chest piece and the pants, but if you are running a build that needs some sort of niche thing, by all means, yeah. There's also another section on the tempering where you're able to, if you don't want to put resistances, you can also add some sort of size or effect depending on what build you are playing. This can be factored into the tempering as well, but if you have like no other idea what you want, maximum life is always excellent to go ahead and get. And remember, you can get that on the gear stat in terms of its roll, and that could be re-rolled. However, as far as the tempering goes, you can basically get 2 different stats of life on your pieces of gear. That's actually pretty important as well, if you want to go ahead and min-max on your HP. Now, as far as the gloves go, you ideally want some sort of aspect that is for your build. If you're playing the Frozen Orb Sorceress, well then you want +2 Frozen Orb, or something along the lines of whatever your main skill is for your aspect. You could put this maybe on a 2-handed if you're on the Barbarian, but I like to keep it on the gloves because if I want to swap builds, usually the gloves will have plus ranks to some sort of a core skill. That could be Frozen Orb, Twisting Blades, that could be Hammer of the Ancients. Whatever it is, you want to try to put that on your glove ideally, unless you need it to be on a 2-handed or an amulet. But what you're really looking forward to getting on your gloves, some of the best stats are attack speed, unless you're running a channeled build, critical strike chance, as well as getting that ranks to whatever skill. And then you can get some sort of flat damage. Now, some of the other ones that are like plus damage to, let's say, cold damage or something, you can roll instead of like 40 to 55%, you can get it to be at like maybe about 10% higher. However, there is a lot more rolls in that category, so it actually makes it so you have a less of a chance to hit on the thing that you want. So there is a double-edged sword with it. If you want to get the min-max, yes, you would roll plus to cold damage if you're playing a Frozen Orb Sorceress or whatever element that you're playing for your character. However, there's usually going to be more rolls, whereas the natural finesse category only has like damage to crowd control, or maybe another condition. So it's a lot easier to hit. But the pants over here, you want something that could be either utility for your character or any sort of extra damage reduction. And then you can get something like maximum life, you can get dodge as well. Getting dodge on all the characters with the exception of the rogue, just get 1 or 2 rolls on dodge and you'll be good to go. There's a few new aspects that can give you either some sort of resource or some sort of fortification or extra resources, depending on what class you're playing and what one you want to throw in. Again, you can get some sort of resource when you actually successfully dodge. You can get either HP, you can fortify. There's a lot of other great things that you can get in Season 4. You can also look forward to getting main stat. And then I put Flame Shield Duration if you are playing the Sorceress. This is an okay stat as well. And you could pretty much try to keep up your Flame Shield 24/7. And then for the boots, so ideally on boots, what you want to try to roll is you want to get movement speed, mana per sec. You can get some sort of defensive like dodge chance. And then if you want to craft on the tempering, you can get movement speed, and the other one doesn't really matter too much. But if we are playing a build that requires some sort of a CC, that could be a freeze, stun, slow, there you go. You can go ahead and throw that in your boots as well. It's just a chance to go ahead and activate whatever thing. And then there is an area where you can actually squeeze out a little bit more damage, considering you can put utility on the boots here. So concussive strikes can be used for any class. It just allows you to apply daze, so that gives you extra survivability technically, and you get to deal more damage. This is actually really good if you combine it with manglers if you're playing on rogue to get even more damage, but this is a great thing to go ahead and consider. But there's a few other aspects here. You can just run the one where, like, if you don't take damage for a few seconds, you can get additional movement speed. That's another great aspect to consider as well. And then as far as the weapons go, it depends on the class that you're playing. But if we're taking Sorceress, for example, you can get either Lucky Hit, or if you're running like Dagger, you can actually get damage to close enemies. So a lot of the like additive damage category doesn't really give you that much more damage. You're better off getting, let's say, like Lucky Hit chance or some other sort of a bonus versus just raw damage. And the reason why is because you're going to get a lot of raw, just flat damage in a lot of these other categories anyway. So you just get more of a benefit, if that makes sense, because it can give you resource on Lucky Hit or something like that. But ideally on the weapons, you can look for max on life, which is brand new to Season 4. You can also get your character's main stat, and you can also get a chance to restore primary resource. You can also get resource cost reduction on a two-hander, and then you can also get, and the most important one to actually temper, is whatever skill that you're playing. It could be, let's say, Dust Devil Size, chance to get double Dust Devils, or chance for your Fireballs, your Frozen Orb, something for your core skills to basically activate twice, or it could be some sort of radius. If you're playing Whirlwind, there is one for Whirlwind Radius. There is some extra bonus to size. Keep in mind that is also changed in the patch notes to go up to 100%, so anything past that won't give you an extra advantage. And then on top of that, I'd like natural finesse, but if you really want to min-max, you can get plus to cold damage, but again, it is going to be risky to go for it because you have a lot more other rolls that you can get that you may not want for your class. As far as in the amulet category, Edge Masters can be pretty much ran on most classes. Intercom is also a good choice. The reason why is it always is active, and against certain boss mechanics, especially if you're playing a build that can have the potential to one-shot, it's great for that. But what you're really looking for on the Amulet is specifically getting movement speed. If your build does need some sort of resource cost reduction, that's really good, as well as cooldown reduction. You could also get extra movement speed and or some damage. You could also look for plus ranks to some sort of passive on the affixes, not tempering, but you can also get plus ranks to something if you have that ability. Again, it kind of depends on the class. If you're playing like the Fractured Winterglass Sorceress, then yeah, the Conjuration, there's one that gives you more damage based on the amount of conjurations you have. That one is excellent to go ahead and grab. Again, this one is kind of build dependent, but it's trying to cover most of the things. And on the Amulet, you do get a 50% bonus. So if you do want to go ahead and get more stats, like you're playing like a Frozen Orb one, you want that like number to be higher, and you're not running a two-hander, you can go ahead and throw it on the Amulet. On the Sorceress, there's tons of different great options, but if you're playing the brand new Frozen Orb one, well then obviously you have Fractured Winterglass, so it's a unique. And then as far as rings go, usually in the ring category, what you're looking for is some sort of thing for your resource. Now, there comes to a point for some builds where you can roll resources on your boots, your chest piece, as well as your helm. You see that I rolled it everywhere. That you may not need to roll that specific aspect to give you some sort of resource on your ring, but the ring category is one area where you would want that sort of bonus to resources to get a huge amount of resource, so you don't ever have resource problems. And it depends on the class you're playing. Like with barbarians, there's like bold chieftains, there's a bunch of other ones for lots of different classes that give you some sort of resource on some condition. But there's one for like Chain Lightning on Sorceress, but just something for resource is great. But the gear stats and the affixes and tempering stats that you want to look out for are usually going to be crit strike chance and attack speed. The other ones, I rolled heavily on the resource cost and the mana for this video because earlier on you might not have the perfect rolls, and if you're not able to consistently spam your damage skill, like you have to use basic skills to regenerate, you're going to significantly reduce your DPS. So ideally you just want to spam the thing that is doing your damage, unless you're playing some sort of combo points rogue build or any like barbarian that has to like swap with the different weapons. But for the most part, you do want to try to look out for resources. But once that is solved, you can get some of the small like damage stuff, like the natural finesse category, just some sort of damage. And there's a lot of different resources in the ring department. And this goes across for the other ring as well. However, it depends on what you are playing. Now, you can see over here, I did also add one of the newer stats over here that you can actually roll that's really good for certain classes that don't have the ability to consistently apply vulnerability. So there is an aspect that you can throw on for lots of different builds. You can just run a Cursed Touch, and this is really great. And if you don't need the resource in like the ring department, it's excellent to go ahead and throw this in. It just has a lucky hit chance to go ahead and apply that Vampiric Curse to the enemy, so you can actually just have vulnerable on that. Now you could also get it on a gear stat as in an affix. So you can go ahead and see over here where I put crit strike chance and attack speed. That's pretty much the two most important stats for majority of builds. And then if you want to, you can get lucky hit chance to make enemies vulnerable. So you don't have to run the aspect and that, but it depends on your build. Whatever you have open slot for, that's totally fine, or whatever the luck of the draw is. Maybe you got one that has a greater affix and you want to keep that one. It's got, let's say, a high roll on one of them and you want to keep it the way it is. That's totally fine too. But you can also look out for, let's say, damage to crowd controlled or extra crit strike damage. There's a lot of builds in this game, or even like damage to slowed targets. There are a lot of builds in, let's say, the key passives or in the Paragon board where it's going to give you some sort of big bonus if you happen to hit enemies on some sort of condition. There's like a X multiplicative bonus damage, like on the rogue. There's like close quarters, like it gives you a portion of your crit strike damage or your damage to crowd controlled enemies. Start rolling that on your weapons and stuff. Look out for that. Again, this is kind of dependent on the class, but I'm trying to make this video for all classes, so this video isn't like super long here, but look out for whatever you are building towards. And then for our offhand over here, actually we need to make this go down a little bit longer. So you'll see that on the offhand over here, we're going to be looking for specifically anything that is useful for your build in terms of the aspect. So just basically extra damage and or utility, but a lot of times for the offhand, you can look out for cooldown reduction, crit strike chance, as well as attack speed. You can also roll life on it, but the most important thing is you're seeing it right now. We have the bonus chance for whatever skill that you're using to cast multiple times. It's basically, if you played Path of Exile, think of it kind of like double damage, because if your core skill is getting a free extra activation, that is really big, especially if you look at one of the key passives like the Avalanche where it can activate twice. This is massive. So this is going to go ahead and be kind of the main stats that you're looking for in Season 4, or even if you're playing the Eternal Realm, these are going to be the things that you may want to hold on to and wait until the season starts so you can salvage it. So keep these and get ready to salvage them, because once they're added into the Codex, they're added there permanently, which is awesome. Well, until, of course, the next season comes out, then you're going to have to refarm them. But if you're just playing on the Eternal Realm, save these and wait to go ahead and actually salvage them later, so that way you can infinitely have them in case you get something better. And if you guys have any of these items already, for the most part, as far as uniques goes, I haven't had the confirmation that we can actually masterwork the items as far as that goes. But if you have any legendary or even rare pieces of gear, you can basically toss them out. And the reason why is they're going to be considered legacy gear. There are going to be stats that may actually still hold some sort of value if it has some sort of condition that is deleted in the game. But we're really talking about very, very niche things. But for the most part, you want to hold on to your aspects if you are interested in playing on the Eternal Realm. Again, wait until it launches to go ahead and salvage and get some of these for later. But if you have like a lot of room, by all means, you can save them and salvage them when the season starts. But if you're really running out of room, I would say probably get rid of your rare items, as they just won't have any real place, because you cannot temper on your older items in the Eternal Realm. Anyways, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up. Let me know, guys, if I missed on any other great aspects. Again, depending on the class you play, there are some defensive ones. Just look out for whatever thing can add some sort of survivability. And what you're really looking for is that damage reduction, because that no longer is a stat that can just roll. Now, if you do have some like rare items that have like damage reduction from close, from distance, and flat damage reduction, those three could be arguably legacy items that are going to be best in slot, and you can never get them again. That's possible that does exist, but you would lose out on tempering, and you would also lose out on mastercrafting, so take it with a grain of salt, but it could still actually objectively be one of the best things to look for. So now that you know maybe perhaps what to keep, this is what you're looking for in the next season. But that's going to wrap up the video. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn on that bell, and I'll update you guys if anything does change, as all of this information is before the season comes out. Sometimes there's bugs and there's crazy things, and I'll mention that and update you guys with another video if there is one. But take care, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.